Well, thank you, my dear friend, for setting expectations really low. It makes it so much easier to come on stage today. And let me also bid you a good morning here in Boca. It's great to be back at Transform. Before I start, I just want to congratulate Stephen and the C3 team for transforming C3. At a time in history where AI will transform and will be obsessed with business value, not just tokens. So congratulations on that. Now, I was reminded about the big change in technology in a conversation with my daughter. I was some 22 years ago traveling to a kind of IT conference, and on my way out, she gave me a hug. She was 5 years at the time, and she looked at me, and then she asked this question with her big, optimistic eyes. Dad, what do you do when you go to work? And I was very happy that she asked the question. So I said, well, I go and meet these people. We have meetings in meeting rooms, and we have meetings on telephones, and yeah, we have a lot of discussions. And she looked at me with a little bit more skeptical eyes and said, anything else? I said, well, I also go to these conferences, and sometimes I even go on stage and have a keynote. And she said, don't you do any real work? Now, before going here to Miami this week, I called her. She's now 27, and I asked her the same question. And she said, no, but my agents do. Now, despite that, when I was thinking about this keynote and the language of business, because I really believe it's time for us to get back to business, not just technology, the first word that came to my mind was not the word agentic AI, it was chaos. We live in a world of chaos, geopolitical chaos, technology chaos. It's not just disruption, it's distraction. We're in this world where on the geopolitical side there's a race for power, and on the technology side there is this race for intelligence. Everyone is trying to build AGI, artificial general intelligence, and everyone is positioning themselves as agentic AI players, and there's lots of promises, there's very little value, and in my world there's a lot of chaos. Now, this path to intelligence will obviously continue, that's clear, but there's already the first limitations that we are running into. We talked about some of them yesterday. On one side, we are running out of energy. And that is a big problem because these big data centers need a lot of energy, and the world is already in a negative on energy, so we need to produce a lot more energy. And I think among the audience you saw yesterday Bloom Energy, and I know Siemens Energy is here as well. I'm sure they will try and figure that one out and earn a lot of money in the process, so that's great. But we're also running out of words, and that's a bigger problem because these models are trained on language, they're trained on words, and these latest models are really trained on all of the words that was ever written by humankind. And so now, in order to train them more, we begin to make synthetic language, words produced by AI to train AI. It reminds me a little bit about the mad cow disease that we had in the UK, I think in the 90s, where cows were fed not just things from the ground, but also dead cows. And so when they were eating cows, they actually got mad. I hope our large language models don't get word disease and lose their sense. But we are in this incredible phase in history where we are training these big models. And there's almost like a new language that we had to learn on top of the business language that we know and on top of the geopolitical language of tariffs and sovereignty and what have you. Now, many AI companies are spending an obscene amount of money because they are trying to make the best LLM happen. And we know them all. We've probably used most of them, and there's this constant fight, which one is now the better? I think the industry right now would say Gemini is a little bit better, but Anthropic is doing really well when it comes to coding. and if they don't lose out on their very responsible way of acting towards the Pentagon, they might have a chance in the next round, but who knows? Now, in this world, we learn these new words like models. We talk about tokens. I've never seen a token, but I pay a lot of money for them. We talk about parameters. I mean, these models are really trained in ways that we never thought possible. And it creates this language that we were not used to. It's quite astonishing when you look at how they're trained. They're trained on like 100 billions of parameters. These latest models are trained on 10 trillion tokens. No wonder they need extremely large data centers. And it is astonishing what they can do, and yet, here's an interesting fact. If you take the amount of data that the largest language models are trained on today, it is roughly the same amount of data that a 5-year-old sees through the eyes the first 5 years of life. So that's where we are. A bit far away from AGI, and we're running out of words. Now, the question I have to you is, would you run your company with a 5-year-old? Now, yesterday I asked ChatGPT, if I have 6 horses, and I want to figure out which horse is the fastest, how do I do that the best way? And ChatGPT answers. You can try it today as well, if they didn't fix the bug. You run 3 races. The first race you run with horse number 1, 2, and 3. The second race you run with horse number 4, 5, and 6. And then the third race you run between the 2 winners of the 2 races. I am sure that my 5-year-old daughter would have just run the 6 horses against each other in one race. That's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Now, these models are impressive. They're trained on incredible amounts of data, but they're also trained on all the lies of the internet. And so we wonder sometimes, why are they hallucinating? Of course they're hallucinating. They are trained on extremely low quality of data. Why? Yeah, because that's the data these companies have access to. There's even discussions about, rights to this data, but that is fundamentally the data they have access to. And so they train these enormous models with extreme amounts of data with very low quality, and they need a lot of data when that data is so low quality to make something meaningful out of it. No wonder that they are hallucinating if that's the quality of training that we give these models. Now, these models, they also have a different way of thinking than human beings. They predict the next word or the next color of a pixel or the next frame in a movie. We don't do that in business, at least not the businesses I'm in. We try to, predict the next event. We don't discuss probability. We make decisions because we need to get something happening. And we certainly don't hallucinate. If we do, we end up in jail in business. So there is a difference between these two worlds, and we need to begin to focus, in my world, a little bit more on the business side of this than just this technology talk and the tokens and the parameters and the hallucinations. I often say that, this is almost like we are allowing our language teacher to run our company. Would you do that? Or a 5-year-old language teacher running our company. That is where we are, Liz. And therefore, I think it's very, very important that we begin to understand what is going on and what will be this next phase of AI, because this is very different. It's not just AI on the screen. This is AI that influences real outcomes in the real world. And therefore, we cannot have all of these hallucinations. And we, of course, cannot have a 5-year-old English teacher run our companies. No, we need to focus a lot more on business. I am a businessman. I'm a technologist, but I am a businessman. I think technology is created in order to serve humanity and business and society, not the other way around. And it's almost like we're getting it the other way around. So we need to focus on the language of business. Now, what is that? Well, in business, we don't talk about tokens. We talk about growth and and outcomes and outputs and risks and throughputs of factories. This is the kind of language we need to talk if we want to have real value from AI, and AI is going to be the biggest transformation of everything, so don't get me wrong, we just need a different approach to it. So to illustrate this difference between the world of AI, which is very fascinating, and the world of business, which is very important, I chose to pick 3 words and just show you the difference, how these words are interpreted in the world of AI and in the world of business. The 3 words are very important for business. It's value. I think that's where everything starts. It's prediction, and it's scale. Let's look at those 3 words. If we start with value, value, as I said, is where it all starts. And has there been value from AI? Absolutely. Just look at the stock markets and the volatility there. It is like we don't really know how to deal with this. Some companies have tremendous value in no time, even if they don't make any money. And other companies are now losing a lot of their value because of AI, but nobody really knows why. Now, in AI, in the world of AI, value is described in the stack. You probably heard Jensen from NVIDIA talk about the AI stack. That's kind of the jargon in the industry. And it starts with the infrastructure layer. That's where you have the electricity and all of that to make the infrastructure work. Then on top of that, you put Jensen's GPU, so that's the compute power. And on top of that, you then train these big models with language, as we've seen over the last few years. And on top of that, you begin to build applications. The problem is that the value right now is going to the lower part of this stack. It's almost like we're obsessed with producing AI, not using AI. It's an interesting idea. And it's not the first time we've seen that in history. It happened with another horizontal technology in the past, namely electricity. In the 19th century, when electricity was invented, we were discussing the kind of electricity we would want to have. There was a big fight between Edison and Tesla. I think Edison won that game. Tesla is coming back now in a different form. And the focus was really about the technology itself. And then, of course, over time, as we all know, the value moves to this side, where it's the use of electricity in the lights that we have, in the machines that we use, in the electric vehicles that we use. That's where the real value of the technology lies, and this shift will always happen. And this is bound to happen as well with AI. Now, when that happens, then, of course, the value of AI moves to the application layer. That's where you have the use of the technology, not the production of the technology. And to do that, we need to get away from the idea that we are predicting the next word in a sentence or the next color of a pixel. This is about real stuff, like how do we have fewer defects in our supply chain? How do we have fewer incidents that cut down the access to our assets? How do we have fewer outages in general? How do we become better at forecasting so we can guide our supply chain? How do we predict the issues in those supply chains so we can counter them before they even happen? And ideally, how do we create new business models that allow us to transform our business and not just sell a product, but maybe sell the product as a service? This is the language of business. Large language models, they are very good at making great marketing, but they're not very good at running operations in a company because they are language teachers. So that is where we need to go. Now, the second word is prediction, because it is in the ability to predict that a lot of the value comes. Now, this is a fast speed train produced by Siemens. I'm very proud of that. It is delivered to Egypt, as you can see. And when we talk about prediction of a train, it's not the prediction of where it's going, because we kind of know that in the schedule. It is the prediction of a failure of a door 10 days before it happens, so that we can fix the door before it jams and therefore not have an outage of this asset. In the world of AI, prediction is very different. It is about the next word. It is about the next token. It's about the pixel prediction or the frame prediction. We need to change that language. We need to come to the language that prediction is about predicting business events, not some words on the screen. And prediction of business events is very different. You don't train that with language. This is math, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I said earlier, would I have a language teacher run my company? Probably not. Would I have a math teacher run my company or a physics teacher run my company? Yeah, maybe, if I could teach them my business. So AI today, with a large language focus, is trained on an absurd amount of low-quality data. The good news is that if you want to predict business events in your business, you actually have the data already. It sits in your transactional systems. It knows what has happened in terms of failures and disruptions and can help you predict that, but you train it not with language, but with data, with events, with assets, information. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a much better training because it's much higher quality of data, and it's very little amount of data compared to all the words ever written by humanity and beyond. And so these models are not only much smaller, they're also dramatically cheaper, and they have much higher value from a business point of view. Better and cheaper. What's not to like about that? Which leads me to the third word in my comparison, the word scale. In AI, scale is defined by the size of the data center. This is about building bigger models. This is about building bigger AI factories, so to say. And I heard recently that Elon Musk is even thinking about putting them out in space so we get the energy problem solved and the cooling problem solved. So now it's getting really big. Scale in business is not centralized. It is decentralized. It is the intelligence in the front line of the business where the action is. This is where you want things to be intelligent and human beings to make decisions on the fly. So it's like the opposite. When we want to scale in business, we need to decentralize. Now, how do we do that without losing consistency? Well, we standardize. We've actually seen this movie before in the computer industry. It all started with a mainframe, and that in itself was quite a miracle. And then I think there were at least rumors that IBM imagined that the world would only have a need for 5 or so mainframes. And look where we are today. Then we went to PCs to everyone, and now we have mobile phones. I think many of you even have 2, so we have more mobile phones than human beings now, and now we're going to the devices as well. This is what happens in reality. This is what happens in business. We don't centralize things if we want to get some value. We decentralize them. Now, how was this possible? It was possible because of an obscene focus on discipline and standard. The PC industry standardized the PC to the nth degree so everyone could produce the components needed for a PC. And the same is true for the mobile industry. So that is scale. If we don't do it that way, with consistency and standardization, what we end up with is my first word today: chaos. And when I hear people talk about the idea that why don't we wipe code some processes in a company, I get the feeling they have never seen a real company. So that's where we are. Now, where are we then going? I think we are at a very significant inflection point when it comes to AI, and for that matter, the world of business. This is almost like the moment where AI moves from the screen and describes the world to reality and acts in the world. That is a very, very significant, different world. One thing is describing and giving you some answers and recommendations. Another thing is to actually doing it. That's what we call agentic AI. Now, this is where it gets really dangerous, okay? Imagine an LLM, a 5-year-old English teacher, not just giving you some advice that might be hallucinating, but taking action on your behalf in your company. That makes me really scared. So we need to understand that this world of some generative AI and then a world of agentic where we influence outcomes in the real world, these are two different things. They need two different types of qualities, and maybe the best way to illustrate that is the autonomous vehicle, which is where we are going. I do believe that we will be going towards what I call the autonomous enterprise. Does that mean an enterprise where no people? No, not at all. But it does mean that many things can be not just automated, but autonomous, which means the systems can deal with the issues themselves, and we can spend more of our time to be creative and strategic about where we are going. And this is exactly the same as in the world of the autonomous vehicle. The autonomous vehicle is real-world AI. It is understanding what's going on in the real world, and it's taking action in the real world. It's not asking for permission. And it's also decentralized. It doesn't get to the cloud somewhere in space and ask, should I drive right on left or brake now? There's no time for that. So it is able to make those calls itself. Now, that is the world that I think we're going to, and we better get prepared for that. This is not an extension of lane assist. Just ask the automotive companies. They don't extend lane assist to do autonomous driving. They completely re-engineer the system to have enough sensors and have enough speed and intelligence to not make any mistakes, because in that world, you don't hallucinate. Now, in autonomous vehicles, there are 5 levels of automation. In reality, it's kind of 2 categories. Level 1 and 2 is assisted automation. That's the lane assist. It's like we can sit there, but we can also relax and maybe drink a coffee, but every now and then it will remind us to hold the steering wheel, so at least we feel like we're working and doing some real work. In the automated world, it's very, very different. So in assisted, this is like the automated factory. This is an example of a Siemens automated factory. This is level 1 and 2. We tell the computers, the machines, the robots what to do, and they will do that. Look at how they're producing exactly the same red car everywhere, because we told them to produce red cars at volume. That world is very valuable. It is super useful, and we can scale production like never before, but it's not transformative. It's like the lane assist. It's not transformative to automotive. Level 3 to 5 is very different. This is totally autonomous. This is where the thing makes its own choices and has no direct interaction with a human in order to make that. This is very, very different. At Maersk, we have this. This is a port in Rotterdam, sorry. It's a fully automated port. It is so automated that there is a fence around the whole thing, and if a human tissue comes inside the fence, the whole thing stops, because they don't want humans to interact with this thing. It does it much better alone. So that is autonomous, and this is very, very different. And the qualities and the way you design technology for that world is completely different to the automated factory where we tell the robot what to do. And that's what we need to get used to, and this is what we need to get prepared for, hence my comments on the transformation of C3. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a design for autonomy. It's not extending a lane assist. Now, what is that? Well, design for autonomy is an architecture question. It's not a feature question. You need to define architectures that are bulletproof for no hallucination and for sensing and acting without mistakes in the real world that influences potentially outcomes and lives. This is where you design for unified data. You have consistent orchestration. You take care of cybersecurity, because if someone can mess with these physical things that can do things on their own, it gets really nasty. This is where you use a lot of efforts on governance and explainability so that you can oversee these systems as they go on trying to be autonomous. This is a very important point, because otherwise, again, we come back to my first word today, which is chaos. If you let the lane assist drive your car, you get many casualties. If you let your English teacher run reality, you will get many casualties as well. So, how do we get prepared for this? I believe a very significant step of that is to have a platform. This is about a design of a platform that is enterprise ready, not just language ready. It is data layers. It is about the ability to build and run advanced mission-critical AI applications in an environment where the consistency of your business is not challenged. This is something else than wipe coding. You can still have coding in this platform, but the platform ensures your governance and consistency across your enterprise, and that, I believe, is absolutely necessary if you ever want to consider an autonomous enterprise. Now, how do we get there? Well, besides the technology, we also, I believe, need a lot of leadership. This is a moment in history where it's almost like we've learned enough to talk AI talk. Now we need to teach AI to learn the language of business, the consistency of business. We need to teach AI how to deal with business in responsible ways. And for me, that's a question of leadership, not technology. It starts by insisting that AI is not about technology. It's about a business opportunity to reinvent your company. And therefore, I have 3 recommendations for you. Number 1, as you embark on this autonomous version of the future enterprise, start with the business. Ask yourself, where will I have the biggest value in my business from doing it in an autonomous way? And then figure out, what do I need from a technology point of view to get there, not the other way around. At Siemens, we asked ourselves this question, and we came up with 3 buckets of business value. One is the more productivity. I call that AI on the screen. The language models will do a lot of that for us, because then we can, get the emails done without our involvement, and the systems can just talk to each other. The bigger bucket is the one where we become more predictive. This is where we create resilience in our business, resilience in our supply chains, where we predict forecast much better, where we react and sense to a world that is getting very chaotic. We can still operate and be predictive about that. And the even bigger bucket is when we put AI into our products, when we reimagine our product to be an intelligent product and maybe even change the business model. That is when you transform not just your company, but an entire industry. And those who don't get it and don't have the technology for it will be completely disrupted by your bucket 3. My second recommendation is it's time to train your own AI. I'm not asking you to train a language model. We have sufficient of those. But you have this golden nugget of data inside of your company and your transactional systems, and you need to now begin to train that. That's where I need the math teacher to start learning about your business, or the physics teacher to learn about the physics in your business, and then you train these models with very high quality of data. And because you do that, you will be able to predict business events, not just the next word in a sentence. As I said earlier, this is high quality data, low volume of data, which means higher value from AI and lower cost of training. And it leads me to my third recommendation. You've got to start standardizing on one, I call it real AI platform. Not some lane assist extended, but an enterprise platform that understands the objects in an enterprise and is able to orchestrate across the entire enterprise in ways that are consistent with your business logic and governance. Some companies will fall in the trap of building their own AI platform, because then at least I know I have my own thing in control. I tell you, that is going to take too long and slow you down, and then you may not ever get there. And by the way, it becomes a technology question, not a business question. I strongly recommend to select an AI enterprise platform. And then master it instead of building it. Master it means don't get dependent on someone else to master that platform. Teach your own people how to build, run, and operate advanced AI based on the data inside of your company. And I've said it a few times on this stage, I'll say it again, I am a big fan of democracy, but when it comes to choosing technology in an enterprise, I suggest dictatorship. So where is this going? Will AI ever be as smart as human beings or smarter? Yeah, I think so. It's only a matter of time. But I don't think it will be in one big, giant AI model that's trained on low quality of data and sits somewhere out in space. I think it will be a combination of some horizontal language models that can interact with human beings in really human ways, but then a number of domain-specific models that are math teachers and physics teachers that are trained on the quality of data you have inside of your operations. These language model companies would give an arm and a leg to get that data. They don't have it, so they train on very bad quality data, and they get hallucinations. Now, if I'm right that this super brain is not one brain, but a combination of many AIs that will be able to talk to each other, the key layer to master is the orchestration layer. The layer that orchestrates these agents so that you get consistency, even though it runs across multiple of AI instances before it comes up with the right answer and takes an action on your behalf in the autonomous world. That's why I'm suggesting you have to master the agentic AI platform for the enterprise. Now, my last point. I am sure that AI is a defining force for our future. But I cannot accept the idea that technology decides where we go. Technology is a tool. It's the amplifier of our human intent. And allow me to add just two more words to my vocabulary of language of business. I always said that leadership is about dreams and details. With all of the opportunities we have with AI, this is the time where we need to dream about a better future, where we use AI in a responsible way and are very clear on what role we want humans to play in that future. And the details is about mastering, in particular, the question around AI, real AI, not just some language teacher, so that we get there in a responsible way. This is a leadership moment. We have an opportunity to shape the future. Our decisions today will shape that future. And many of the leaders who will shape that future are in this room. So promise me one thing. When someone asks you the question my daughter asked me, what are you doing? You tell them that you are shaping the future of agentic AI in a responsible way. Thank you very much.